You'll want to let us in, Mr. Ordway. Easier inside than out here, where the neighbors can hear. Hear what? I don't know you. We represent Mr. Fenn's family, 9 nights. An old man with a diagnosed decline in a stranger's home, unsupervised. You can see how that reads, how it reads. It's a bed. He's sitting 10 feet behind me with his shoes in his hands because you knocked. Ask him how it reads. We're not here to ask him anything. We document. That's why there are 3 of us.
Mr. Fenn's family?
You mean his son? The one who calls at 10 at night and gets hung up on? He sent 3 lawyers to my door in the rain.
He sent us to protect a vulnerable adult and to discuss the matter of influence.
Behind Travis, the old man had gone still on the edge of the mattress, shoes in both hands. Down the hall, a 9-year-old in her socks watched the 3 suits the way you watch a sky about to open. He had thought, right up until the word influence, that they'd come to thank him. What he did not know, and would not understand until the end of that night, was that the man paying these 3 lawyers to make a crime out of his kindness was the only person on earth with a reason to need it to be one. 9 days earlier, Travis Ordway had owned exactly 1 bed, and he slept on the edge of it. I was 38. He moved furniture for a living. 11 years, 6 days a week for Marlowe Moving and Storage out of Hartselle, Indiana, which meant he spent his days carrying other people's whole lives up other people's stairs. Wedding beds, dining tables, boxes marked kitchen, and boxes marked baby. He set families down inside their new homes and drove away, and at the end of every day he went back to a 2-bedroom apartment where the only thing he owned that was built for 2 people was the bed, and he used half of it. He had a habit he couldn't break. He measured doorways. Every doorway he walked through, at friends' houses, at the laundromat, at the school. He read the width out loud without knowing he'd said it. 31 and a half. The whole trade came down to one question, asked 10 times a day. Does this thing fit through that gap, or do you take the door off? A good mover never tells you your couch is too big. He takes the door off the hinges. His wife's name was Shay. She had not died. That was the part nobody in Hartselle knew how to hold. 3 years ago, on a Thursday morning with no fight the night before and nothing thrown, she had left a note 4 lines long on the kitchen counter and gone. Once a year at Christmas, a card arrived with a stamp on it and no return address. When a man's wife dies, people bring casseroles. They sit with him. When a man's wife leaves, the town does a quieter thing. It decides, without ever saying so, that he must have done something. Nobody asked. Nobody brought anything. At the grocery store, men he'd known since high school found the far aisle. A woman from church left a card once that said, "Thinking of you," with no name signed, which was its own kind of question. What did you? Folded into 3 kind words. He carried it in silence for 3 years, and he slept on the right edge of the bed, and the left side stayed flat and cold and unslept in, and he never once said out loud that it did. His daughter's name was Ivy, and she was 9. The night Shay left, Ivy dragged a thin camp mattress out of her own room and laid it on the floor beside her father's bed, and she had slept there ever since. They had never discussed it. It had simply happened, the way the cold half of the bed had happened, and after a while it stopped looking sad and started looking normal, which is worse, because normal is a thing you stop seeing. Ivy collected cardboard coasters, the kind from diners and bars. She had 40-some in a shoebox, and she read the printing on them out loud, and she asked questions so direct that grown adults looked at the floor. She was, her father sometimes thought, the only fully honest person he knew. She asked him things at the wrong times, which is the only time children ask the real things. In the truck once, at a light, "Do you think Mom's cold wherever she is?" And another time brushing her teeth around the toothbrush. When she left, was it the floor's fault? Because she'd worked out in the way of a child, that the floor was where they slept now, and a child looks for the broken thing nearest to hand. He never had answers that fit through the door of a question like that, so mostly he said her name, Ivy, soft, and she let him off because she was kinder than the questions were. He met the Fenns because of a late job. It was a Tuesday, 9:50 at night, and Travis was loading the last of the empty blankets back onto the truck outside Alderwood Care Center. He'd spent the evening moving one man's entire life into a single room on the 2nd floor. A recliner, a dresser, 40 years of a marriage boxed down to what fit through a 32-inch door. It was the part of the job nobody talked about. You could tell a lot about a place by the size of the rooms they gave people at the end. In the parking lot, under a light that buzzed, an old man was standing beside a wheelchair with 2 suitcases at his feet. I was maybe 80, in a coat too heavy for the season, and in the wheelchair was a woman with a blanket over her knees, awake, her eyes going back and forth across the parking lot like she was reading something written on the air. The old man was just standing there. Not waiting for a car, standing the way you stand when you have run out of the next thing to do. Travis got in the truck. He started it. He pulled out of the lot and he drove 4 blocks, and at a red light with nobody behind him, he sat and looked at his own hands on the wheel. Then he turned around. I was not a saint, and he wanted that on the record, if only to himself. He almost didn't. He drove past a stranded old man once, and it was only at the light that the thing his father used to say came up in him. You don't leave furniture on the curb in the rain. And he hated that the first frame he'd put it in was furniture, but that was the frame he had. He pulled back in. He rolled the window down. You folks need a hand? The old man looked at him a long moment. They had 1 bed, he said. It came out of him with no preface, the way true things do when a person has been holding them too long. 1, she's got the mind trouble, so it's her the spot's for, not me. He looked down at the woman in the chair. They said I could visit. How long you been out here? A while. He straightened, embarrassed. There's a place takes couples. It's 90 miles. Waiting list. He said the number 90 like it was a wall he'd walked into. I'll figure something, I just haven't yet. The woman in the chair said, all right then. It was warm, and it was final, and it did not connect to anything anyone had said. That's Alma, the old man said, and his whole face changed saying it. I'm Silas. 54 years. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. 54 years was the sentence. His phone rang in his coat pocket. He took it out, looked at the screen. Travis saw the name light up, Lyle, and he pressed the side of it until it stopped and put it back and did not explain. Travis didn't ask. I've got a couch, Travis said, which was a lie. He had a bed, and he heard himself keep going anyway. One night, get you off the pavement. We'll figure the rest in the morning when people answer phones. I couldn't. You're not taking anything. It's a floor and a roof. He got out and started collecting suitcases before the old man could build a wall out of his pride. 1 night. I did not know it would be 9. The first night, Silas Fenn refused the bed. He stood in the doorway of the 1 bedroom and looked at it. The queen with the silver tape on a 2-inch tear along the seam. The flat, cold left side. We'll take the couch, he said. We've taken worse than a couch. We're not putting a man out of his own bed. You're not putting me out of anything. Travis was already dragging the camp mattress and Ivy's blanket into the front room. It's a bed, Mr. Fenn. It's not a favor. A man's bed is a man's bed. Not this one. Me and my daughter sleep out here. Have for a while, he straightened. Ask her. Ivy, in the doorway in her pajamas, confirmed it with the flat authority of a child. We sleep on the floor. It's better. You can see the whole room. See? Travis spread his hands. You'd be doing me a favor taking it off my hands for a night. It just sits there. Silas looked at him a long moment, and something in the old man understood that the younger one meant that last part more than he knew he did. 1 night, he said. So the Fenns took the bed, and near 11 that night, Travis walked past the half-open bedroom door on his way to shut off the hall light, and he stopped because something was wrong with the picture. The old man was lying on the far side of the bed, the empty side, flat on his back, eyes open, hands folded on his chest, not asleep, just lying there in the dark on the side of the bed nobody was in. Alma was in the wheelchair by the window, still awake, still reading the air. 3 minutes, maybe. Then Silas sat up, slid himself over to the near side, and only then did he get up and go to the chair and gather his wife and bring her to the bed, easing her down into the spot he'd just left. Travis thought the old man was confused. He thought it was the mind trouble catching them both. He went to bed on the floor beside his daughter and didn't say anything. It was 2 more nights before he understood. On the 3rd night, he found Silas at the kitchen table at 1 in the morning, not able to sleep. And Travis put the kettle on because that's what you do. And he asked, that thing you do, lying down on her side first. He set a cup down. You don't have to tell me. Silas turned the cup a quarter turn and didn't drink. She used to run cold, he said, her whole life. Feet like a creek in March, a small breath that wasn't quite a laugh. For 50 years. In the winter, I'd get in first, warm her side up so it wasn't a shock when she got in. She'd complain I was a furnace. I'd say somebody's gotta be. He turned the cup back. Then a couple years ago, she stopped telling me she was cold. The words went, she'll shiver and not know it's a word. So, he shrugged, and his ruined bricklayer's hands opened on the table. She gets cold and she can't tell you anymore, so you go first. Travis sat down across from him and found he couldn't say anything for a while. You warm the side, he said finally. You warm the side. Silas looked at him. It's the last thing I've got that still works on her. She doesn't always know my name. But she knows when the bed's already warm. Her shoulders come down. You'd have to have watched 50 years of shoulders to see it, but they come down. In the front room on the floor, Ivy was pretending to be asleep and hearing all of it. The next evening, before Alma sat down on the couch, a 9-year-old climbed up and sat in the spot for a minute, then got up and patted it and stepped back, and nobody had taught her, and nobody said a word about it. Alma and Ivy had worked out an arrangement that no adult in the apartment fully understood. In the afternoons, in the good hours, Ivy would get the shoebox down and sit beside the old woman and read her the coasters. All of them. She read the name of a steakhouse 2 towns over and the slogan of a beer nobody drank anymore, and a phone number with the last digit worn off out loud, one after another, like a liturgy. Alma understood not a single word of it. She sat with her hands in her lap and her eyes on the girl's face and listened to 40 minutes of cardboard as if it were the most important news in the county. "She doesn't know what any of it means," Travis said once, quiet, from the doorway. "She's not listening to the words," Ivy said, not looking up, turning a coaster over. "She's listening to me." Once, midway through the stack, Alma reached over and put her hand flat on the top of Ivy's head, the way you'd check a loaf for warmth, and held it there, and said, "All right then." And Ivy kept reading like nothing had happened because to her, nothing had. She was the only one Alma reached for. Nobody could explain it, not her son later, not the doctors. She didn't know Travis's name from 1 hour to the next, but when Ivy came into a room, something in the old woman's face changed weather, and that was simply a fact of the apartment, unexplained, like the cold half of the bed. Here is what Travis Ordway did over the next several days, and it should be said plainly, because later, a great many people in suits would describe him as a man who inserted himself. I took an unpaid morning and drove the 90 miles to the only facility in the region that took couples, and he sat in a beige room across from a woman with a name tag and a screen. "Earliest we could look at a shared unit is about 14 months, she said. "They don't have 14 months. She wanders. He's 83. "I understand. I do." She turned the screen a few degrees, the way people show you a thing that's going to say no. "And there's the application. There's no Medicaid file on Mr. Fenn at all." Nothing started. "He never filed." "Then that's the first 14 weeks before you even get to the 14 months. She said it kindly, which was worse. "Can I ask, did he not apply because of the money or because of the pride?" Travis thought about the man refusing a bed in an empty apartment. The pride. He thinks asking for help is a kind of stealing. "Most of my hardest cases think that." She wrote something. "It's usually the sweet ones we lose." He found Faye Mulligan. She ran a licensed adult family home, a real house at the dead end of Bellows Road, 6 beds, a kitchen that smelled like a kitchen, and it was the one place inside 90 miles that could, in theory, put 2 people in one room. He sat at her table for 3 hours with a stack of forms and a pen that ran dry halfway through. "There might be an opening in a couple months," Faye said. "Might not. Mrs. Ganassi upstairs is 94 and stubborn as a fence post. God keep her a while yet." She slid a fresh pen across the table without being asked. "You're doing that thing people do. You think if you fill the forms fast enough, the beds appear faster. I've got 2 people and 1 bed and a clock. Everybody's got a clock. That's the business I'm in. Clocks." She looked at him over her glasses. "Can I ask you something and you don't take it wrong?" "Go ahead." "Why you? You're not family. You're not paid. You've got a girl of your own and a job that starts at 6. She folded her hands. "Men don't usually walk 2 strangers up their own stairs. What's it get you?" "Nothing." He signed a line. "It's a bed. It's not a favor." Faye watched him sign the next one. "You keep saying that like it's about them." He looked up. She didn't press it. She just took the finished forms and squared them on the table and said she'd call if Mrs. Ganassi's fence post constitution ever gave out, and that these things could not be rushed, and that he seemed to think they could. And at 4:10 in the morning on the 7th day, Alma got out. Travis woke to the apartment door standing open and the camp mattress beside him empty of nothing. Ivy was still there, but the front room cold with outside air. He found Alma 4 blocks away in the parking lot of the all-night laundromat, in her nightgown, no shoes, trying with great patience and total conviction to open the door of a car that was not hers. I didn't run. He didn't shout her name because he'd learned by then that her name wasn't a handle you could grab her by. He took off his coat and spread it over the hood of the car so the metal wouldn't be cold. And then he sat down on the curb a few feet away, and he waited. "Cold night for it," he said, to nobody, to the parking lot. "You know what won't fit through that laundromat door? A full-size dryer. 30 inches, that door. Dryer's 31. People try it every time." He kept his voice flat and low and going, a fence for her to find in the dark. "You take the door off, though, and it walks right in. Everything fits if you're willing to take a door off." Alma stopped pulling at the handle. She looked at him for the first time, really looked, the reading the air look coming to rest on his face, and she said, "So, all right then." And it was the voice that meant yes, the tired one, and she let him stand and put his coat around her shoulders and walk her the 4 blocks home with his hand under her elbow like a man walking his own mother. Ivy was awake on the front room floor when they came in, sitting up, having said nothing, having not woken her father because she'd trusted he'd bring her back. She moved over on the camp mattress and Alma lay down on it in the dark in her nightgown between the girl and the wall, and Ivy put the shoebox where the old woman could reach it, and the two of them were asleep before Travis got the door locked. I thought it was the best thing he'd done in 3 years. I was right. He also could not have handed his enemies a better weapon if he'd wrapped it. On the 6th day, Silas had asked him for paper. Travis tore a job ticket off the clipboard by the door, a Marlowe inventory sheet, the back of it blank, and handed it over with a pen, and Silas sat at the kitchen table for 40 minutes and wrote slowly in the cramped hand of a man whose fingers had laid brick for 60 years. He folded it in quarters when he was done and put it in his coat. Nobody read it. Travis assumed it was a letter to the son who called and got hung up on. I was half right. On the 9th day, 3 lawyers came up the stairs. The lead one was named Arliss Pruitt, and he never once raised his voice, which was how Travis came to understand that raising your voice is something people do when they don't have any actual power. Pruitt had power. He sat at Travis's kitchen table like he'd been invited and laid out, in the calm vocabulary of a man reading a weather report, the shape of the thing. An unrelated adult male had taken a vulnerable elderly couple into his residence. During a 9-day period, the male had transported the wife to and from facilities, had been the sole adult present when the wife was found wandering a public roadway at 4 in the morning, and had, this was the part Pruitt slowed down for, obtained a handwritten document from the husband, an 83-year-old with a diagnosed decline under conditions of what the filing would characterize as undue influence over a vulnerable adult. "We're not accusing," Pruitt said, for the 2nd time. "We're documenting." "You keep saying that word, vulnerable." Travis's voice was low, and it was not steady. "He laid brick for 60 years. His mind's fine. It's her that's—" "Then you concede you were aware of a diagnosed incapacity in the household," and continued. "Pruitt wrote something. Thank you." That was the moment Travis understood that in a room with a man like this, every true thing you said became a brick in a wall he was building around you. "Who's paying you?" he said. "The family. The son, who calls at 10 o'clock at night and gets hung up on. That son." Pruitt closed his folder. "Adult Protective Services will be in contact. Until their assessment is complete, we're requesting no further contact between you and Mr. or Mrs. Fenn, in writing, so it's clear." He set a single sheet on the table. "It's not a legal order yet, but when a caseworker sees a request like this refused, it tends to inform how they read everything after." "Let me ask you something," Travis said. "You ever meet them? Him and her? You sit in a room with them, either of you?" "That's not relevant to—" "You wrote vulnerable adult on a form. 9 times, I counted, upside down." Travis leaned on the counter because his hands wanted something to do that wasn't a fist. "You know what's a vulnerable adult? A man who laid brick 60 years, whose hands don't close all the way anymore, standing in a parking lot at 10 at night because a building had 1 bed and it wasn't for him. That's vulnerable. And you're not here about that. You're here because somebody with money decided the vulnerable one is your client's reputation." "We're not here to argue, Mr. Ordway." "No, you're here to write it down so it argues later. I got that part." Silas had come to the bedroom door. He stood there holding his shoes, and he said to the room in a voice that had laid down a lot of heavy things in its life and knew how to set one more down gently. "My son sent you. Mr. Fenn, you shouldn't— My son sent you to my friend's house." He looked at Travis, and the apology in his face was the worst thing in the apartment. "I'm sorry. I'll go. Don't let them put this on you." He started to bend for his shoelaces, and his back wouldn't let him and Ivy cross the room, and knelt and tied them, double-knotted, the way she tied her own, and the lawyers watched a 9-year-old tie an old man's shoes and wrote nothing down, because there was no box for it. The caseworker's name was Roz Tabor, and she was not a cruel woman. She had a lanyard and a soft voice and a job that had shown her every kind of thing people did to the old. And she came to the apartment 2 days later with a clipboard she clearly wished she didn't need. "I have to ask some questions, and some of them are going to sound like accusations." "They're not. They're just the form." She sat. "Did you at any point discuss Mr. Fenn's estate?" "His what? He owns 2 suitcases." "Did he give you anything? Money, property, a check, a promise?" "He gave me 40 minutes of trouble every night, refusing to take a bed he needed." She wrote, "The night the wife was found on Delburn Street, you were the responsible adult present. I found her. I brought her home. You were also the reason she was in an unlicensed residence from which she was able to exit unsupervised at 4 a.m. Roz said it gently, and it landed like a slap because it was, he realized, completely true. Mr. Ordway, I believe you're a good man. I want you to hear that what I believe is not the instrument here. The instrument is the file. And the file, right now, reads like a man with an empty apartment took in two people with resources and a diagnosis and kept them close. They don't have resources. They have each other. That's the whole... The son has resources, Roz said, and the son is the one asking. And then she asked the question that turned the beautiful thing into the dirty thing. There's a note in the intake that Mr. Fenn lies down on the far side of the bed before his wife uses it every night. Can you explain that behavior to me? Travis opened his mouth to explain it. The cold, the 50 years, the shoulders coming down, and stopped. Because he could see, even as he reached for the words, exactly how they were going to write it. Subject exhibits unusual and controlling physical routines around the vulnerable adult, including lying in her bed. He saw it land in the file. He saw what it would look like to someone who had never watched 50 years of shoulders. You already wrote it down, he said quietly. However you're going to write it, I can hear it from here. Rose, Tabor looked at him for a moment, and something in her face was sorry. And she wrote it down anyway because that was the instrument. They suspended him from Marlowe that week. You know I don't believe a word of it, the owner said, and he didn't meet Travis's eye when he said it, which told the truth about how much that was worth. But I can't send you into people's houses with a state investigation open. First customer that Googles you, I'm done. You understand. I understand. It's not firing, it's a suspension. Word comes back clean, you're back on the truck Monday. And if it doesn't come back clean? The owner didn't answer that, which was the answer. So the paycheck stopped, which meant the one thing Travis had that was actually his, the ability to carry a heavy thing up a flight of stairs for money, was gone too. And then Lyle Fenn came himself. I was 56 and he wore an ironed shirt and a good watch and the particular ease of a man who owned 3 car dealerships and was used to being the most reasonable person in any room. He set a briefcase on the kitchen table and out of it he took a check and a single typed page. The check was for $40,000. For your trouble, and I mean that sincerely, you've had trouble. Lyle slid the page across next. This just says you had no role, you were unaware of any medical condition, and you'll have no further contact. You sign it, the whole thing goes away. APS closes the file. You get your job back Monday. He capped his pen and offered it. Nobody has to be the villain here, Mr. Ordway. This is me making it easy. Travis looked at the check for a long time. You know what I do for a living, he said. I move people, 11 years, and there's this thing that happens. A family's got a couch, big one, and it will not go through the door, and everybody stands around, and somebody always says it won't fit. Leave it. He pushed the check back across the table with one finger, and a bad mover leaves it, and a good mover takes the door off the hinges. That's the whole job. That's the only difference between the two. He looked up. You've got a couch that won't fit, Mr. Fenn, your mom and your dad, and one room. And instead of taking the door off, you're paying 3 men to prove the couch was too big all along. Lyle's jaw moved. You don't know anything about it. I know he lies down on her side first so she's not cold. I know you hang up on him. Travis stood. Take your check. It's a bed. It's not a favor, and it's damn sure not for sale. Lyle Fenn took his check and his page and his briefcase and left. And at the door, he stopped. And for just a second, the reasonable man was not there. And something underneath it looked out. Something cornered. And then the door shut, and it was gone. Travis refused the check, and he lost. That is not how the story is supposed to go, and it is how it went. The no-contact request became a caseworker's recommendation, and the recommendation had teeth, and within the week, the thing the whole 9 days had been fighting to prevent happened anyway, cleanly, with everyone's paperwork in order. They separated them. Alma went into Alderwood, the single spot, the one that had started all of it. Silas went to a facility 40 miles the other direction because that was where a bed was. Travis was allowed to be there when they moved Silas out, standing by the door with his hands useless at his sides, under an order that let him watch but not help. Mr. Fenn, don't. The old man wasn't angry. He was folding a shirt with hands that couldn't quite do it. Don't say sorry. You gave us 9 nights in the same bed. You know how many I thought we'd get that night in the parking lot? None. I'd done the arithmetic. It was none. He set the shirt in the case. 9's not none, son. 9's a whole different number than none. They're 40 miles apart. Who's going to warm her side? Silas stopped folding. He didn't answer, and Travis understood that there wasn't an answer, and that the old man had already lain awake with the same question and come up empty the same way. Lyle paid for both facilities, the good kind, private rooms, windows, a garden you could see. He paid for everything. He had always paid for everything. It was the one verb he had. And Ivy, On the floor of the front room in the dark, said the thing that Travis had no answer for. You gave them the bed because nobody was using the other half anyway. It wasn't cruel. She wasn't old enough for cruel. She was just a child saying the exact true shape of the thing she'd watched, that her father had a cold, empty half of a bed, and it had been sitting there unused for 3 years. And the first people he'd ever given it to were 2 people who refused to be apart. And maybe, some of that had been about them and some of it had been about the half of his own bed he couldn't stand to look at anymore. Go to sleep, Ivy. Did they take it back because they didn't like it? No, they liked it fine. That's the problem. She thought about that in the dark. That doesn't make sense. No, Travis said. It doesn't. You can have my spot. She moved over on the camp mattress all the way to the cold edge and left him the warm middle of it. You go first. I already warmed it. And that was worse than anything the lawyers had said. The call came 4 days later, from a number Travis didn't know. This is Faye Mulligan. I'm not supposed to call you. I know about the order. A breath. She's not sleeping. Who? Alma. Alderwood sent her over to me for a 2-week respite. They're short a bed. It's a whole thing. It doesn't matter. Faye's voice was tired in a way that had nothing to do with the hour. 9 nights, Mr. Ordway. She hasn't slept. They've got her on things. She sits up all night on the far edge of the bed with her hand flat on the sheet next to her, like she's checking if it's warm. And it isn't. And she won't lie down on a cold sheet. 9 nights. 9 nights. He had given them the bed for 9 nights, and it had taken her 9 nights of not sleeping to lose it. Why are you telling me this? Travis said. You said it yourself. There's an order. Because I've run this house 11 years, and I have signed a lot of people's last paperwork, Faye said. And I have never once seen the system ask the only question that matters, which is who's going to be cold. And I'm 61 and I'm tired of it. That's why. A pause. I don't know what you can do. I don't think there's anything. I just couldn't be the only one who knew. Rose Tabor convened what she called a case conference, which was a folding table in a county building, and everyone around it. Lyle, the 3 lawyers, Travis with no lawyer at all, and Roz in the middle with the file that had eaten a man's life. She said she was going to enter the disputed document into the record and read it aloud so that its context could be assessed. It was Silas's page, the back of a Marlowe inventory sheet folded in quarters, the cramped bricklayer's hand. Pruitt had built half his case on it, the handwritten document obtained under undue influence, and now Roz Tabor unfolded it and read it to the room, and it did not say one word about money. It was a medical directive. It had crossings out. It had been written by an 83-year-old man at a stranger's kitchen table because he'd understood, before any of them, exactly what was coming. Do not separate us, not for a bed, not for a bath, not for anything. If you have to move one of us, move both, or move neither. She cannot tell you when she is afraid. I am the only one who still knows how to read her. Take that away, and you are not caring for her. You are storing her. And then, at the bottom, crammed sideways into the margin because he'd run out of page, in smaller letters, not meant for a courtroom at all. Tell Lyle it was not his fault. Tell him I know about the 90 miles. Tell him I know he had 2 days and a wall in front of him. A man can do the wrong thing for the right reason and still be my son. Tell him to come at 5 o'clock. The bad hour, not 2. She is easy at 2. Any coward can come at 2. The room was very quiet. The father had forgiven the son before the son had even finished trying to pin it on a stranger. Arliss Pruitt was the first to move. He reached for the page. May I see that that's not a directive in any recognized... It's signed and dated and it's in his hand, Roz said, and did not give it to him. You built a filing on this document, Mr. Pruitt. You called it evidence of influence. I've now read it into the record. Would you like to tell me whose influence you think it shows? Pruitt did not answer because there was no answer that didn't cost his client the case. And a man like Pruitt never spent his client's money on a sentence. Travis found his voice from the end of the table, and it came out rough. He wrote it on the back of my job ticket, day 6. He asked me for paper, and I gave him the nearest thing, and I never read it. You want to know what undue influence I had over that man? He looked at Lyle. I gave him a pen. Lyle Fenn was not looking at any of them. He was looking at the page in Roz Tabor's hands, at 4 inches of his father's handwriting, at the word coward, and the words 90 miles, and the words still be my son. His face had come apart very slowly over the length of the reading, the reasonable man's surface sliding off at a piece at a time, and what was underneath was not a villain. It was a 56-year-old who had gotten a phone call at 4 o'clock on a Friday and been given 2 days and a wall of 90 miles and had done the only thing there was to do and had spent 3 years arriving at 2 in the afternoon so he would never have to see what it had cost. He stood up in the middle of it, knocked his chair back, and walked out. Nobody followed him, and this is the part with no lawyers in it. Lyle drove the 40 miles to the facility where his father was, and he got there at 4:45 in the evening, the bad hour, the one he had spent 3 years never coming for, arriving instead at 2 when she was easy, when it cost him nothing. He had told himself for 3 years that 2 o'clock was when it was convenient. It had never once been about convenience. He found his father's room. He opened the door. It was linen day. The bed had been stripped to change the sheets, just the bare mattress, blue-ticked, nothing on it. And his father was lying on it, on the far side. On his back, eyes open, hands folded on his chest, on the bare stripped mattress, warming a side of a bed for a woman who was 40 miles away in another building, because his body had done it every night for 54 years and did not know how to be told to stop. I didn't look at his son. He was looking at the ceiling. "She'll be cold," Silas said. Lyle Fenn, who owned 3 dealerships and had never in his life not known what to say, stood in the doorway and made a sound he hadn't made since he was a boy. Lyle dropped the case. He fired the 3 lawyers in one phone call and did not ask for the retainer back. He called Travis close to midnight and got 4 words out: "I need your help," before he had to stop and breathe for a while, and Travis let him, on the floor of the front room, with Ivy asleep beside him and the phone against his ear. But Travis did not make it easy, because it should not have been easy. "Here's the thing you're not gonna like," he said. "You can't buy your way back into this. You've got money, and money is real, and it'll pay for the good room with the window. Fine, pay for it. But that's not the thing. Tell me the thing." "The thing is, you go first," Travis said it slow. "Every week, you lie down on her side and you warm it up before she gets in. And I'll show you how, once. Then you do it, and you do it in the hours when she doesn't know who you are. 5 o'clock, 6, the bad ones. Not 2 in the afternoon when she's sweet and she'll thank you. Anybody can show up at 2. He heard the man breathing. "And it's not a deal with me. I want that clear. I'm nobody in this. It's a deal with her. She's the one who's cold. I don't know how to read her. You said, my dad said, he's the only one who—" "Then you're going to have the worst year of your life learning," Travis said. "That's the price. There isn't a smaller one." There was a long silence on the line. "My father," Lyle said finally, and stopped and started over. "When I was small in the winter, he'd get in my bed first. If it was real cold, warm it up so I could get in." His voice was doing something. "I forgot that. I forgot it for 50 years, and it came back tonight standing in that doorway. He did it for me too, before he ever did it for her." A breath. "I didn't do it once. Not once for either of them. I sent a check." "So send the check," Travis said, "and then learn the other thing." "Okay," said Lyle Fenn. "Okay." It took 11 weeks to get them back into the same room, and even then the system got it wrong the way the system does. The opening finally came at Faye Mulligan's house on Bellows Road. 1 room, 2 people, which was the whole point. Except the double bed the intake paperwork had promised turned out to be 2 twin beds shoved together, with a seam running straight down the middle of it, a cold trench of daylight between 2 mattresses. Alma stood in the doorway of the room and would not go in. She looked at the seam, and she said, "All right then," in the voice that everybody now knew meant no. So Travis went and got his bed, and everything went wrong, which is how he knew it was real. The truck's hydraulic liftgate, which had been threatening to die for a year, finally died in the lot at Bellows Road, and kicking the latch didn't do it anymore. So it was 4 flights of stairs, on foot, on a bad left shoulder, a queen mattress with silver tape on the seam. Ivy took one end, Lyle Fenn took the other in an ironed shirt and ruined it, and said nothing about it. They got it to the bedroom door, and the door was 2.5 inches too narrow. Travis had read the number out loud when they first walked in days ago, and nobody had listened because nobody ever listens to the mover reading numbers. So they took the door off its hinges. There was a long scrape down the frame that was never going to buff out. 1 corner of the bed never sat level again. They shimmed it with a paperback, and the paperback stayed there until the last day. Ivy looked at Lyle Fenn, who was sweating through his good shirt with his father's bed in his hands, and she told him the true thing, the way she told everyone the true thing. "It's a bed. It's not a favor." Then they all went out and shut the door that wasn't on its hinges anymore, and left the 2 of them alone. And Silas Fenn, 83 years old, lay down on his wife's side of the bed first, on his back. Hands on his chest, eyes open, 3 minutes the way he had for 54 years, warming a cold sheet for a woman who could no longer tell anyone she was cold. Then he moved over, and Alma Fenn crossed the room and sat down in the warm place and let the 2 words she had left out into the quiet, and for once in the whole story, they connected to exactly the thing that had been said. All right then. 4 months later, Travis Ordway went back to work. In the cab of the truck now, there's a spiral notebook with the names and numbers of 4 adult family homes inside 90 miles. And every time a job turns out to be a family moving, one old person out of the house they lived their whole life in, he leaves a page behind before he drives away. He doesn't call it anything. It doesn't have a name. It's just a page with some numbers on it and one line at the top in a mover's blocky hand. When it won't fit, take the door off. Lyle Fenn comes on Saturday evenings now 5 to 8, the bad hours. He is not good at it. He lies down a little crooked, a little fast, still half a businessman, even flat on his back warming a sheet. Nobody corrects him. His father watches from the chair and says nothing. And the not correcting is its own kind of forgiveness, the conditional kind, the kind you have to keep earning past the day you're sorry. He asked Travis once, at the door on his way out, whether it counted, whether doing it wrong still counted. And Travis, who had spent 3 years getting a great many things wrong in the dark, told him the truest thing he knew, that it only counts when it's the bad hour and you'd rather be anywhere else, and that the crooked ones count double. And in apartment 4, on a new bed, cheap, the right size, bought on time, there is a 9-year-old girl who, for the first time in 3 years, sleeps in her own room. Not because anyone told her to. Because one night in October, her father sat down on the edge of the camp mattress on the floor and, for the first time since a Thursday morning 3 years before, said a true thing out loud about her mother. Not much, just one true thing, in the dark. And something in the apartment that had been holding its breath since Shay left finally let it go. The cold half of his own bed took longer. It took months. It is a small thing, and it was the hardest thing, and it is the last thing this is about. A man who had spent 3 years sleeping on the edge, teaching himself one night at a time how to lie down in the middle.